Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /Entitled People, where people truly believe it's all about them and who cares about anyone else, right? And in this episode, we've got car accident Karens, super entitled grandparents, and the last OP shares a really long story of how one folding chair destroys a whole family. Guys, the entitlement in this episode is next level. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. A few weeks ago, I witnessed a large car crash. There were 7 cars involved, of which 3 totaled. Today, I got news that everyone involved survived. If anyone did die, I wouldn't be sharing this story. The day this happened, my hubby and I were driving about 5 cars behind the accident when it happened. This one guy was driving around 110 miles per hour, which is 180 kilometers an hour on the freeway that had a speed limit of 70 miles per hour. The guy raced past us, and my husband said something along the lines of, "Holy cow, that guy's gonna get into an accident one day." And not even a second later, the guy crashes into someone changing lanes. They spin out of control and then crash into another car and hit some more cars before stopping. A bit about my hubby and I is that we're currently enjoying an advanced first aid training course. My hubby through his work at the Special Forces and me through the Red Cross Emergency Response Team. For that job, I always have my uniform in the back of my car. If I get called, I need to be able to hop in and head to an emergency site as quickly as possible, so my gear is always ready to go. So we stop, I grab my jacket and the suitcase with my equipment. I tell the first few bystanders I pass to call emergency services. My husband's moving through the site to check for hazards like leaking fuel, which wasn't the case thanks to a miracle of the car gods. I was looking over every casualty to make initial urgency checks. I would be in charge of everyone stopping to help because I was the only one in uniform until ambulance and police arrive, at which point they get charged. So I had to make sure that I knew who needed treatment. That said, on to the entitled mother, the Karen if you will. Her car was hit on the side, damage to the passenger side door. She seemed shaken, but okay, and her son appeared to have a broken arm, nothing major. I move on to the next car and I spot some signs of neck trauma. Right away, he's on the top of my list. I tell my hubby what I suspect, and he starts his work to check vitals together with a nurse who had stopped to help. Meanwhile, I move on to check on the others. I only had 2 cars left, and I didn't want to miss any major casualty. Of those 2, only the speeding car has another major injury. I'll spare you the details, but it appeared later that something laying around in his car hit him in the head, leaving a crack in his skull. Not good. So I call one of the people on the phone over and I tell them everything I find and do, so he can relay it to the emergency services. At this point, Karen comes running over to me with the eyes the size of a full moon. She's holding her son and his broken arm. She screams at me and says, "Hey, how dare you walk away? My son needs help." I just tell her I walked away because this man needs my help more. I just brushed her presence off. Anybody would be in shock at such moments, so I did understand her having her priorities mixed up. She then says, "Yes, but you can't walk away when seeing my son needs help. You are a doctor. You are obligated to help." Now, I'm not a doctor, but she thinks me to be one. I just tell her, "Madam, this man has a way worse injury. Can I focus on my work?" The Karen, now with her arms firmly at her sides, says, "I demand you help my son, or I will have you fired from your job. His arm is broken." To which I respond, "And this man can die. Please take your son behind the guardrails. I'll be with you when this ambulance takes this man from my hands." At this point, Karen screams at me and says, "Are you stupid? My son could maybe die as well. You don't know without checks. He could very well have a brain injury or something." She then starts to pull on my shoulder aggressively. Meanwhile, the first ambulance had arrived and they're working on hubby's case. He therefore had joined me and the Karen, which I hadn't noticed yet due to my focus on my patient who was having trouble breathing. My husband says, let's take a look at him then. He then kneels down in front of the boy, checking his breathing and pulse to get a basic image of his vitals. The Karen mumbles something along the lines of, finally, somebody useful who does something. At this point, my husband gets back up and gives the boy a hand. He says, you're a brave boy, not even a single tear from you. Let's get behind the guardrails now. That way, you'll be safe. He ignores Karen and he guides the boy to the rest of the patients. That's when Karen says, he needs help right away, right? Tell this woman that my son could have died because she's so effing useless. My hubby then says, your boy might die. Hearing him say that, Karen audibly scoffs at me. My hubby then goes on and says, in about 80 years or so, maybe longer if he engages in a healthy lifestyle. For now, he's doing good enough to be fine. I would have liked to see the Karen's face at this point, but I was too focused on the man in front of me, who did end up surviving and losing his driver's license. A cop who saw it happen did offer me to make a case of it due to her attempt to obstruct a professional who was working to save a life. But honestly, I don't want her to get such a thing in her file. To me, she was just a worried mom who wanted her son to get some aid. Drive safe, folks. Listen, I do understand the level of panic and concern that mom probably had. And she did come off super entitled when calling OP useless when they were clearly responding to a man who needed immediate attention. But like OP said, she was involved in a car accident and she was probably super shaken and running off adrenaline. So you can't really fault her for acting like that and saying what she said. I do, however, love how hubby responded to it though. Your kid will die, Karen, in about 80 years or so. And if you think that post was wild, you might hate the grandpa in this next post. Listen to this one. So my mom's side of the family is super entitled and narcissistic, and they've always treated me and my brother like total garbage. I have a ton of stories about this, but this one is the one that always has me bothered the most. This happened years and years ago when I was in middle school. The only person in my mom's family who didn't treat me differently from the other kids was my great-grandfather. Because of this, we became really close, and I really enjoyed having a family member treat me like a normal human being. Eventually, his Alzheimer's began to worsen, and he was moved to a senior living community. We'd go over to visit fairly often, and it seemed that our company brightened his mood quite a bit. In fact, my dad and I were the only two people he never had a hard time recognizing. When he passed away, I was devastated. Even at my young age, I knew it was coming, but when my parents told me, I felt like I was hit by a bus. I cried for days straight. I volunteered to help with anything that would help the family. It was a lot of work, packing up and moving everything from his room at the senior center, as well as his old house, just doing whatever was needed. The day of the funeral, the entire family meets in the parking lot of the cemetery about 20 to 30 minutes early. A few of us were standing around talking as the rest of the family arrived, and we're about to head in when Grandma and Grandpa, the entitled people of this story, realize that my uncle, their son, wasn't there yet. So they call him, and he feeds them some grandiose story about why he's late, and it absolutely isn't his fault. They had the phone on speaker. Now, a thing about my uncle is he's always late. He then fed them some silly sob story or something, but you could hear my grandma go, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" Now I want to note that my uncle could do no wrong in my grandma's eyes, no matter what the mistake, nor how damning the evidence. She will defend his actions no matter what. They then hang up the phone and everyone starts walking to their cars to drive to my great-grandfather's resting place. And that's when my grandpa stops everyone and he says, "Wait, how will my son know where to go if we're all gone?" A handful of people did try to provide solutions, like text him directions, or he can ask someone who works there to direct him there, but none of that is good enough. Grandpa then walks up to me and he says, "You don't need to come with us. You need to wait right here so your uncle knows where to go." He then proceeds to give me directions to find the right spot. I of course fight back and I say, but I want to go. Why can't you give him those directions? Grandpa then says to me, because I'm giving them to you. What I say goes. It doesn't matter, he'll be here soon. Now I knew this wasn't gonna be the case. When my uncle's late somewhere, he's mega late. So I stand in the parking lot waiting and waiting and waiting. I didn't have a cell phone or a watch at the time, but I knew it was well over 15 minutes. After some more waiting and crying because I was missing the whole service, I pulled myself together and my uncle finally shows up. As I'm directing him through the back roads of the cemetery, he's basically driving with his knees while texting, not giving a damn at all. He then misses the turn I told him to take. We turn around, take the turn, and find my family. As I get out of the car, I can see everyone starting to leave. I couldn't effing believe it. I walk up to my mom and I asked her, what's going on? She tells me the service is over, we're gonna have lunch and a small ceremony, and hearing that, I broke down. I went and I sat in the car and I effing bawled for what felt like 20 minutes. At the small ceremony, I didn't eat, I didn't speak, and I refused to look at my grandparents or my uncle. And to this day, thinking about it, it still infuriates me to no end. Yeah, reading this post, I can't help but to feel so bad for OP. Like, I can't even begin to imagine the rage OP felt that day. And seriously, how many of you, if in OP's shoes, would have gone F him and refused to stay back? I know I would. Like, who cares if Grandpa or the family got upset at me at that point? Uncle's late, that's his fault. And I'm going to that service to see off the one person who ever gave a damn about me. Like, I just hate that family BS sometimes. I'm the elder, so what I say goes. And for all who are wondering, OP did come and comment in the post that when this happened, they were 12 years old. Which makes it even worse. Like, who would leave a 12-year-old in charge of something like that to stand in a parking lot alone and think they aren't important enough to go to the service? Let me know what your thoughts are on this post. Okay, so hear me out. For as long as I can remember, in my family, almost any time I got up from my seat, someone would take it to either be funny or to claim it as if no one was using it. And as a teenager, it literally got to the point that I brought my own folding chair so I could pick it up and carry it with me. If I left it where it was, someone would take it. Then they would get mad if I wanted it back. As an example, on holiday last year, I'd get up from my chair for a moment to help with something, and I came back to find a kid in it, and then the family berating me for wanting them to move. I just tell them that when a man owns and brings his own chair, they expect to be able to use it. Now, I owned a very nice folding chair that's comfortable and easily portable, and I pretty much bring it to any family event because people are always scrambling for chairs. Well, the other day, I went to a birthday party for my nephew, and like always, I brought my own chair, but at some point, I had to use the bathroom. When I came back, my chair was gone, and everyone acted like they didn't know where it was. I then said they had 1 minute to return it or I was leaving. They just laughed at first, but then realized that I was serious as I start going for the door. Everyone told me to calm down, that it was just a joke. That's when I said I don't care if they think I'm a stick in the mud. I wouldn't be bringing my own chair all the time if other people weren't always taking my seat when I get up. I don't think it's funny. I never did. That's when my brother-in-law then pulls the chair out of where he hid it, and when I got it back, one of the legs was bent. I of course said it wasn't like this before, and how could he possibly have done this to a metal chair? He then said he could fix it, and he tried to unbend it, but only made it worse. I then told my brother-in-law that he owes me $50 for the chair because that's what I paid for it new 2 years ago. He then got mad, and he kept saying it's just a stupid chair. I said it's my stupid chair, and this wouldn't have happened if he wasn't so immature, and that he and everyone else had to mess with me for years about where I sit. I then took my now messed up chair and walked out. My family's been blowing up my phone, saying it's just a chair and to let it go, but I still want my brother-in-law to pay me back for it. Update: last night, I sent out a mass text to my family that I won't be going to any family function no matter how important it is, until they make this right by promising not to screw with me anymore, and to repay me for the chair. They've mostly gone quiet now, but I can wait. I've got all the time in the world for them to realize I'm serious. Update number 2. So I wasn't gonna come back here again, and things escalated a lot after I made that post because I linked it to my parents and my family members. I only did so because so many people saw them as the a-hole in this situation, and I wanted them to see it too. And to say that they were furious with me is an understatement. Some even mocked me, saying things like, "Oh, you'd better watch what you say or do around OP. He might just post about it on Reddit and get everyone to hate on us." But when they actually read the comments on my post when I made them, they became mortified. My brother-in-law did agree to pay me for a new chair, and he gave me the money I asked for. I bought a better folding chair than my last one, and I resumed going to family functions. But whenever I was there, it was awkward. They looked at me like I sucked all the fun out of the room. My parents had stopped thinking the chair thing was funny, and they even scolded a kid for taking my seat when I got up. The only problem is that kid was my nephew, and he started crying when they made him get up. My brother-in-law, of course, came to the boy's rescue, and my nephew ends up blurting out that his daddy told him to do it. When I was out of the bathroom, there was a big fight about it going on. Several family members, including my sister and brother-in-law, were all yelling that it was just a damn chair, and that I shouldn't be so sensitive about it. I just told them that none of this crap would have ever happened if they hadn't been so intent on messing with me when there really was no point to it. And I only started bringing my own chair because I could never find a stable place to sit. I said if they thought they were in the right about this situation, then they were just bullies, plain and simple. And what kind of example is that to be setting for their son? Hearing me say that, my brother-in-law rages. He grabs my new chair and he hurls it through the living room window. There was a bit of a pause before he realized what he'd done. He then took off in his car and he left my sister and nephew there. My parents got my sister to call him, and over the phone, they threatened to go to police if he didn't pay for the damages. My brother-in-law yelled a few F-bombs until my sister took the phone back. She said he can either make things right or she'll divorce him. Well, that did the trick because he came back looking like a sad puppy with his head hanging low. He apologized to me and my parents without even looking at us, and then he said he would pay for a new bay window, which is probably a few $1,000s, and he left again. My sister said he drank himself to sleep that night. My new chair was just fine. My brother-in-law hires a window company to come replace the window. I imagine it was extra expensive because it's a bay window. My family was still divided about this situation for a while, mainly brother-in-law's parents, my uncle, and a couple of cousins. They blamed me, and they called me obnoxious and silly over insisting on bringing my own chair and refusing to let anyone else use it. So I compromised. I said if I had a good designated seat that no one will try to take away, that I'll leave my chair in my car. It only took 2 more family barbecues before they finally agreed to this. Since then, I've left my chair in my car unless there really wasn't enough seating, and that's only happened once since. The problem is, though, that even though they've stopped screwing with me, they were still screwing with each other until things went too far. They still like to take each other's seats, but I guess others were following my example because they put their feet down and demanded it stop. It's been going on for decades, and they've had enough. My brother-in-law stayed out of the fight entirely, and he hasn't caused any more trouble. But for several family functions, a number of people didn't bother to show up. My mother was broken up about it because she loves hosting parties. It took months, but everything more or less normalized again. But without the chair thing going on, some people have resorted to other stupid pranks. They would do cellophane over the toilet so pee goes everywhere. Cellophane in a doorway so people would smack their faces. They would also mess with drinks, hide shoes, and finally, the one that really infuriated my aunt and uncle was when a party was held at their house and a glitter bomb went off. They got the carpet professionally cleaned, and they billed the person who made the glitter bomb for it. So now, pranks are over. They don't want any pranks anymore, and I'm fine with that. But the last few family functions have been a bit dull. Last update. So somehow, I return again, and with some crazy info on some stuff that went down this past year. I never could have imagined how things could have spiraled into what happened. If you guys thought that my brother-in-law throwing my chair through a window after his son wasn't allowed to sit on it was crazy, read about this. You're not gonna want to believe it. The family pranks that I described in my last post stopped, but some of them slowly resumed. However, they were only harmless little things that just gave chuckles. The only person they refused to prank at all was me, due to the events of my previous post. But that didn't stop the entitlement. The 7-year-old son of one of my cousins stole my phone during a birthday party at my parents' house and intentionally broke it rather than return it. His parents were already going through a rough patch. My cousin, the father, was constantly clashing with his wife over how to parent their child. His now ex-wife was a bad enabler of their son. She's also terrible with money, and she has a very her way or the highway attitude, and she doesn't seem to back down when wrong. She was one of the more outspoken people that hated me bringing my own chair and never sharing it, but she never got physical about it. She once confronted me, and she said if I was gonna bring my own chair, it should be something nice and made out of wood that doesn't fold. I told her I wasn't gonna lug around a dining room chair wherever I go, when a folding chair takes up only a little space in my trunk. She argued with me about it more, but it got nowhere. None of the family events were at her house, and she doesn't dictate my life. She just gave me death glares for months, but otherwise, she left me alone. The night her son stole my phone, he was already grounded from electronics by his father. The kid took my phone when I set it down on a table to eat some cake, and he ran off with it when I wasn't looking. He holed himself up in the master bedroom, and he was trying to install gaming apps on my phone. They had a lock on the door, and the key was lost years ago. The brat refused to come out or return the phone. His mother kept telling us, mainly me, to leave him alone and let him game on it, but I refused, and I said my phone was not his toy. The brat was told several times to open the door, and he refused. All the while, his mom kept contradicting everything I said. My cousin then got fed up, and he started forcing the door open by body checking it. It's an old manufactured home, and the door was pretty flimsy. Just as he was making headway, we heard loud bang sounds coming from inside. The kid had started banging my phone against the nearest hard object he could find. The brat let out some loud screams as his dad pulled him out of the room. The screen on my phone was completely destroyed. Thankfully, the rest of it was protected by the case. My cousin's wife then tried to blame it on me, and she said it's my fault her kid broke the phone because I wouldn't let him game on it. Hearing that, everyone in the room turned on her, and she shut up out of cowardice. It cost around $300 to repair my phone, and yes, my cousin paid for the repairs. Well, the rest of the family knew about my cousin's wife's hate for folding chairs, and they decided to pull a prank on her because of her attitude after the incident. Now, I'd like to be clear that I was not involved in this in any way, nor did I really condone doing it, but the entire thing was out of my hands. My cousins got together and they decided to prank that bee of a wife, and they got their hands on a whole bunch of folding chairs. They then removed every chair and seat in his house, and he replaced them with folding chairs at the dining table, folding chairs at the counter, folding chairs in place of living room furniture, and more chairs were placed around the house. Even the chairs on the porch were replaced with them. When my cousin's wife came home, her reaction was far beyond what anyone would think. Their plan was to just record her having a tantrum and to get a laugh. But she ends up going insane on the spot, and she tried to get a knife from the kitchen to attack her husband with. When she couldn't get the knife, she then pulls out pepper spray from her purse and she used it on him. She probably would have tried to claw his eyes out or something, but thankfully, one of the other guys there kicked her off him, but he was pepper sprayed too. The police were obviously called and the wife was arrested since it was all caught on camera. They recorded everything, like her trying to get the knife and screaming, "Someone is gonna get stabbed for this prank." She had to go stay with her sister after spending some time in jail. And her sister, I hear, is just as narcissistic as she is. My cousin obviously filed for divorce, and his wife later spent some more time in jail after pleading guilty for the assault. She wasn't allowed anywhere near her son for a while, and she tried to take it out on my cousin in court during the divorce. That did not go in her favor because he was easily able to prove how unhinged she is. My cousin got primary custody of his son, and his ex only gets supervised visitation since she's mentally unstable. She pretty much abandoned her son, and since then, she's shacked up with some older man, and she got a serious tan and bleached her hair. I guess she'd rather live the life of a sugar baby caked in makeup. My cousin's son has shown great improvement since being separated from his mother. He was put through counseling, and he listens to his father more now. The kid has to be babysat a lot since my cousin has to work, but at the very least, things did get better. I still feel like the root cause of this is because of the chair thing though. What a post that was, guys, and honestly, reading this, I couldn't help but to think, did no one ever mature past adolescence in this family? Like, the level of immaturity is astonishing. Like, just family members pranking family members to the point that it's toxic bullying, right? And to target OP specifically at every gathering was cruel. And about OP thinking that the chair thing started all of this, I don't think OP should blame themselves because, again, the immature, entitled people in this family did it to themselves. Like, if it wasn't the chair, something else would have set these events in motion. Like, the chair was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Guys, let me know your thoughts on that crazy story. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where bad bosses are getting taught lessons they won't forget. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.